Now that you're more familiar with the basic definition of social protest art, you're going to get a chance to choose a specific piece of social protest art. You'll be able to identify what it's doing and analyze its effect on the audience, such as yourself, using its stylistic choices. So, what social protest art moves you? As we've seen, social protest art can encompass a lot of different areas, from broad questions of power, such as class struggle, racial struggle, gender based struggle, to more specific movements, Black Lives Matter, the Vietnam War protests, the AIDS crisis. The list goes on and on. And the effect a piece of social protest art has on you will depend on not just the choices the artist made, but also on you. You will have a different experience looking at a piece of Vietnam War protest art than someone who lived through that era or someone who fought in that war themselves. A person from Vietnam will have a very different experience than someone from the United States or from a different country entirely. But that's totally fine. When you bring your own perspective to a piece of art, that's really where the meaning is created, in that communication between the art and the viewer. So, as you're going through these examples of social protest art, think about which ones mean something to you, which ones appeal to you, which ones catch your attention. That will give you something to talk about. We're going to be looking at an article called The 25 Most Influential Works of American Protest Art Since World War II. So the title's pretty self explanatory. Obviously, social protest art spans all time periods and all countries. We are narrowing our focus just for the purposes of this lesson because we are looking at this art in 2020's America. We are looking at modern American social protest art. But I highly encourage you to consider examples of international protest art or older or even very recent examples as you go through the rest of the lesson. So again, by social protest art, we mean any art form that addresses and challenges cultural power structures. It doesn't just represent the way things are, it asks us to push back against that and consider how things could or should be with the goal of changing society. This particular article was written in October 15th, 2020, so not too long ago. And it was written in the New York Times, and it's the work of three artists, one curator, and one writer coming together to create this list. Now, of course, these five individuals have their own experiences and biases, so please don't take this list as the be all end all top 25 social protest art pieces ever. These are the 25 pieces deemed most important by these particular five individuals. Another set of five people might come up with a different list, but it's a good starting point to see what art has had a major impact in our country in the last 70 or 80 years. Their criteria was art that has not only best reflected the era, but art that has made an impact. So when you look at the art, you should be able to tell where it's coming from, and you should be able to see how things have changed since it was created, at least to some extent. So, how does social protest art actually work? It uses stylistic choices that the artist is making in order to address and challenge cultural power structures. If we're looking at visual art, as we will be in this part of the lesson, stylistic choices can include things like color, texture, lighting, shading, size, lettering, contrast, any of those visual qualities. So, for example, with this mural of George Floyd on the right, the artist chose for it to be in black and white. They chose for it to be a close up of his face. They chose to have that harsh contrast with the shadows and the lighting, and many other things. All of those choices change the way we view this piece of art and change its message. You might start by picking one choice you see in this picture and thinking about why the artist might have made that choice. In a later part of this lesson, we'll talk about stylistic choices made in written pieces of art and audio pieces of art, such as plays or songs. So we'll come back to that. But for now, we're just going to focus on the visual. So as you look through the article, you're going to find one work that is interesting or that resonates with you. You'll notice it's a pretty long article. I think it's about 35 pages, so please don't feel like you have to read the whole thing. I recommend you skim through looking at the pictures, and when you find one that really stands out to you, slow down and read the description of that particular art piece beneath the picture. Once you've chosen your artwork, you'll answer the following questions in the packet. You'll identify which piece of art you chose and what made you choose it. You'll talk about why it's considered protest art, so that'll come from reading the part of the article after it. Then you'll pick one aspect of the art that you think is memorable or powerful, the one piece that really makes the biggest impression. And finally, you'll choose one stylistic choice, again, that can be color, lighting, size, etc. And you'll talk about the effect that it has on the viewer, like yourself. How does it make you feel? What does it make you think? Why do you think the artist chose to do that? So my sample is using this work of art on the right. This is Andreas Sterzing's Silence Equals Death from 1989. It is a portrait with some editing done to it, as you can see. This piece of art is considered protest art because it is the portrait of the artist, David Wojnarowicz, where his mouth looks like it's been sewn shut. He did this to make a point about how he felt silenced in talking about the AIDS crisis. At the time of the AIDS crisis, it was often considered very socially unacceptable to bring it up, as it was tied in with questions of sexuality, sexual health, disease, morality, and many people received harsh pushback for trying to comment and bring awareness to these issues. So he tried to capture that feeling through this art that is directly challenging the silence he felt. The piece of art that is particularly memorable to me is the artist's own identity. As the article explains, he was HIV positive and died just 3 years later at the age of 37 from complications of the disease. So the creator of this art was bringing his own personal experience, and for me, that adds a lot of power to the piece. One particular stylistic effect is, of course, those stitches, or what appear to be stitches, on the mouth. This is a very striking and horrifying detail that really gets his message across, that being forced to be silent on this issue is like bodily mutilation. Another piece about this art that really gets to me is that expression in his eyes. He is looking directly at the viewer with his eyebrows kind of knitted. He is holding us accountable. We are a part of this art piece. So that would be another stylistic choice as well. So now it's your turn. Take a look through the article, skim through and find one piece that resonates with you. Then look at the description given by the author of the article. The article will also have some commentary based on those 3 artists who collaborated on the article. And once you've found your piece, read some of the text to get an idea of the art piece. There's a lot of amazing pieces in here. For the packet, just pick one, but of course you're welcome to look at others for your own interest. Once you've chosen your art piece and read through, answer the questions in the packet. Feel free to model them off of my example answers in this video, but do not choose the same work. It's actually not included in the article PDF for that reason. Think about which piece of social protest artwork moves you. You're going to remember it. Feel free to chat with other people around you about your pick and their pick. But then make sure you're completing the questions on your own. For this part, the response should really be your personal response. So you can talk about it with others, but your answers shouldn't be the same as anyone else's. I hope you can find a piece of protest art that really speaks to you. I'm excited to see what you come up with.